We led off with Auburn. I want to get back to Hugh Freeze. I want to ask you about KJ Bolden. But I do want to talk about Florida State, too, here off the rip. You know, they get Charles Lester, a big commit. And while we're still unsure about what's going on in Miami, even though I think Mario, given some more time, letting those young guys get a little older up front, they're going to have a chance. Billy Napier, probably going to be choppy waters here in the next 2 years. South Florida, I hope Golish does well. Who knows? And UCF to the Big 12, who really knows? But Florida State right now in recruiting, can you just kind of speak about the week and weekend that they've had and just what Mike Norvell's doing down there?
Yeah, you know, guys, it's really kind of come full circle since Mike Norvell took over. You mentioned where Florida is and where Miami is. Well, when Mike Norvell took over that Florida State program, they were the team on the bottom rung of the Big Three. They were the team that was entering with Dan Mullen having been there for 2 years and Manny Diaz having been there for 2 years. It was kind of the exact reversal of the situation Mike Norvell finds himself in now. Now he's the veteran coach with the built-in relationships with recruits. And he's the team that is, you know, maybe, I don't want to say the winning program in Florida because all of them have been down pretty bad, but at least he's the best of the worst in the state of Florida. And it looks like Florida State has kind of turned that corner on the field. And now they've kind of turned that corner off the field on the recruiting trail as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. They're poised to have a big year. You mix that big recruiting class with that big year. That's how you really start to build the rocket ship. And, I mean, remember the Mike Norvell drama that was happening before last year and how the look that Florida State had with Prime rising up at Jackson State? He weathered that storm. And, you know, they know about weathering storms down there in Florida, especially in Tallahassee. But when you look at what he's doing, it's unbelievably impressive. The facilities are getting better as well. But, Josh, back to the Auburn front. You know, Hugh Freeze has got a huge hill to climb with what's going on at Georgia, with what's going on in Alabama. But I let off the show with it. I cannot remember the last time that they flipped an Alabama and a Georgia player of this caliber, or really in general, in the same class, let alone within 4 days. Do you think that that Hugh Freeze and Auburn, that this may be a legitimate recruiting just turnaround and Febreze Brothers style fresh start?
The last week or two at Auburn would make you feel that way. It certainly would. And let's see what happens at the end of the week. Do they land another five-star KJ Bolden? You know, they flipped a five-star from Alabama into Marcus Riddick, one of the top linebackers in the country. Over the weekend, they flipped Perry Thompson, a five-star wide receiver that was committed to Alabama. And all of a sudden, the buzz is that they're maybe the favorite in 5 days to land the number one safety in America out of Buford High School in Georgia, KJ Bolden. So all of this is happening so fast, but obviously the results that you've seen from the last week or two didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah.
Hugh Freeze has been laying this groundwork since he arrived at Auburn. I think they had a bit of a wake-up call when they lost the five-star wide receiver to Texas A&M, but now they got things rolling. And to answer your question, I don't think this has ever happened. I talked to Jeffrey Lee of our Auburn Live site.
Yeah.
And yes, there's been times where they flipped a five-star from Georgia. They flipped a five-star from Alabama, but he ended up being a 4. I can almost equivocally say that Auburn has never in one cycle flipped a five-star from both Alabama and Georgia.
Wow. KJ Bolden, right now, I know you followed that recruitment. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but you're a guy that's very plugged in. That's why they call you the Glade Man. August 5th, that's when he's committing, I believe. That's the date that he has. Am I correct there? And where are you leaning anywhere?
KJ Bolden is committing August 5th on the On3 YouTube channel. So we will be hosting that commitment around 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And we'll also be covering Amari Jefferson about 3 hours earlier. He's a wide receiver picking between Alabama and Tennessee. So let's talk KJ Bolden here for a minute. Entering this commitment week, I don't know if I've ever seen, well, I shouldn't say ever, but at least in recent days or weeks or months, seen a recruitment where every team has some bit of optimism heading into this date of his commitment. It's kind of wild. I mean, he took this last visit to Auburn. He's been to Florida State multiple times. There's a ton of buzz around Ohio State. He's got family on the coaching staff there. But when it comes to KJ Bolden, look, the way Georgia's recruiting right now, I'm going UGA until it ain't.
Yeah, that's not a bad strategy at all.
Josh, Colorado's headed back to the Big 12. They joined the Pac-12 after the 2010 season. Now they're going back to their roots here. You know, what is this going to mean? Is this a good move for the Big 12? And what other dominoes are we going to see fall with the Pac-12 since they don't have that TV deal in place?
Oh man, the Pac-12 is decimated. I don't think they're not going to recover from this. And honestly, I don't think the Big 12 is going to be around much longer. I think eventually you're going to see two super conferences made up of the Big Ten and the SEC. And I'm not saying this is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe it will. But we've seen the tectonic plates shift in college football really for 15 years now. Yeah. And what you're noticing, if you take a step back, it's really just an arms race right now between the Big Ten and the SEC. Now, whatever they call those two conferences in the future, they call them in the future. But I think right now, yes, the Big 12 is trying to keep their head above water, but with the arms race that's taking place next to them, I think eventually the best teams from the Big 12 will also be engulfed into either the SEC or Big 10. Eventually, I'm not saying like it could happen in the next 2 or 3 years, but I do think eventually we see all of these power teams at two conferences. But to answer your question, I do think it was a good move from Colorado, at least from a financial perspective. You never want to be on a sinking ship. You don't want to be the last person on a sinking ship. And that is definitely what the Pac-12 is right now.
Now, I agree with you on every point there. And kudos to the Big 12 for finding a way to survive after we got the news for Texas and Oklahoma. Like, they're doing everything they can do. But I agree with you. Colorado's going to come back into a conference now that looks vastly different than the one they left 12 seasons ago. I mean, no more Missouri, Nebraska, Texas A&M. There won't be Texas or Oklahoma by the time they get in after this next season. So, you know, the $31 million a year is great, better than a situation they were in. But how many seasons is it going to take where the SEC and the Big Ten are just outpacing you before you look around and say, hey, we can't keep up at this rate, especially if Coach Sanders is still there? That's the thing. And it sounds like no one was surprised. I think this was all worked in. I mean, Tim Brando called this on our show back in December. My second question for you is, what's going on at Miami right now with the NIL situation and the recruit, the big donor that they have down there, John Ruiz, I believe it is. Yeah. What are the details out of Miami?
Well, if you ask anybody covering the program, well, except for the Miami Herald or anybody on the staff, they'll just say nothing to see here. It's all good. You know, the Canes Collective took over all the Ruiz contract. I'm not buying any of that. I mean, Miami just had Nevin Shapiro 2.0 right under their nose in terms of the fraud or the potential fraud that was taking place of investors' money. And he said that this was all going to be different, right? Because Life Wallet was an actual product that they were going to back it up with, and there was an actual return on ROI here. Of course, all of that was nonsense. We saw the numbers. They lost $400 million. The face of Miami NIL was very brief, but he will be remembered for a long time. You know, they say that everything's okay, but I think there's more to this story, and I think there's also going to be more fallout to some of the NIL deals because they were overpaying a lot of guys just to get on campus, just to commit to the program. Well, what happens once those good recruits start playing? Of course, they're going to want more money than they came in with. So I think there's some roster disparity that they're going to have to deal with. There's going to be some financial speed bumps down the road. Miami is an interesting team to watch just because how far out in front or what they did in NIL that first year and how they're going to come back and kind of make it all right with John Ruiz gone.
Yeah, and if there's federal laws that get mandated in NIL, Miami may be like the example of what they look to when they're trying to fix these laws. There's a couple other schools in there as well, but we're going to keep monitoring it. Speaking of monitoring, Blaine, what's up?
Josh, what's up, man? Hey, we're going to go to the Booster Club here with a little Texas Ed. He wants to know, how has conference realignment affected recruiting so far?
For Texas?
Yeah, for Texas, for anybody really.
For Texas specifically, it's been huge, and I think the early addition to the SEC also helped give them a bump. I talked with Colin Simmons, the 5-star edge out of Duncanville, Texas, and he even said back in the spring, I want to go to a SEC school. I want to play in the SEC. And to him, with Texas now moving a year earlier, that was a big play for him. And I know that the Texas staff had been negatively recruited against that too, saying, oh, well, you're really only going to be in the SEC for this many years. They've been telling recruits that for a while now. And with the early entry into the SEC, I do think that Texas is capitalizing on it. They are using it to help land recruits. They are utilizing it in their recruiting speeches. So I think it's been huge. It's been big for Oklahoma. Oklahoma coming out off of a not so great season, but the excitement and the hope of joining the SEC and playing in a power conference like that has helped them on the recruiting trail.
Hey, Colorado's win total this year, 3.5. Am I taking that over or under?
Go for the over, right?
Oh, I love it.
Coach Prime.
I love
Go for
it.
the over. How many coaches does Coach Prime have right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's that I tell you what.
The over? Does he have 4?
I'm going to take. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard for me to just think about. I still think Prime without 1 foot could go out there and lock somebody up.
Nah. Throw me the fade. Throw me the fade. Don't they open with TCU?
Here's the thing, though, with Colorado. Here's the thing, though, with Colorado, Josh. Up front, dude, are they going to have a chance? Like, skill position-wise, I think they got some guys that can go out there and play. But we know that's not the biggest difference maker, right? It's up front. Is Colorado just good enough up front to just survive a game against a team that is good up front, or multiple games to be able to get to that 4-win mark?
I mean, you look at that schedule, and in all honesty, if you look at that schedule, you try to find 4 wins, it's tough.
It's a Where's Waldo situation for sure.
Is a really good number right there. I mean, look at Colorado State, right? Like, that should be the one team on that schedule that Colorado can go out there and dominate. But hey, if you're Colorado State and you've been sitting around all offseason and all you hear about is Coach Prime, like, even Colorado State is going to be ready to play Colorado this season. So it's going to be tough to find those 4 wins. However, the way he's going to sell it is this was a 1-win team last year. If they win 2 games, they just doubled their win total from the year before. I don't think they have what they need in the trenches yet, but I do think that Dion, with his ability to recruit, can turn this roster over in 2 seasons and really have a formidable roster.
It's one of the most fascinating stories to watch out there. But speaking about fascinating to watch, man, like we said, loving what y'all are doing over at On3. We love having guests on from over there and collabing with you guys. Josh, can't wait to have you on again, my friend. It's always a good time. I know we're just revving up, man. We're just revving up. Couldn't be more excited. Tell everybody where they can find your content individually as well.
Yeah, the On3 YouTube channel. I'll be dropping the Inside Scoop. That's our bi-weekly recruiting show. It airs Mondays and Thursdays, and we talk all things recruiting. It's a great time. Go check it out. Subscribe to the On3 YouTube channel.
Josh, thanks for joining us, man. Hey, YouTube, we are like 6,000 subs away from 100,000. We appreciate you guys so much. If you haven't subbed yet, make sure you do it. We got a ton of content coming. Regardless of the sport you love, you're going to love the way we talk about it. Let's hit that 100K.